Do you have an expired cake for my daughter? The millionaire heard everything. The small bakery on Maple Street was preparing to close for the evening. The smell of fresh bread and vanilla frosting still floated through the air as employees cleaned counters and packed away the remaining pastries. Behind the register stood 28-year-old Sarah Miller, wiping down the glass display case after another long shift. Business had been slow that week, and several cakes remained unsold in the refrigerator behind her. Just as she was about to lock the front door, it opened quietly. A tired-looking woman stepped inside holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been older than 7. The girl's shoes were worn, and her coat was slightly too big for her, but her eyes sparkled with excitement as she stared at the colorful cakes displayed in the window. The woman approached the counter nervously. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I know this may sound strange, but do you have an expired cake? Maybe one you were planning to throw away?" Sarah looked surprised. "An expired cake?" The woman nodded, embarrassed. "Tomorrow is my daughter's birthday. She keeps talking about having a birthday cake for the first time, but I can't afford one right now. I was hoping maybe you had something that couldn't be sold anymore." The little girl immediately looked down at the floor as if she regretted coming. Sarah's heart sank. Before she could answer, a voice spoke from one of the tables near the window. "Why are you asking for an expired cake?" The woman turned and saw a man sitting alone with a cup of coffee and a laptop. He was dressed simply, and neither she nor Sarah recognized him. The woman hesitated before answering. "Because my daughter deserves a birthday cake, even if it's one nobody else wants." The man slowly closed his laptop. "What's your daughter's name?" "Emma," the woman replied quietly. The little girl gave a shy wave. The man smiled at her. "And how old will you be tomorrow, Emma?" "7, she answered proudly while holding up 7 fingers. The man looked toward the display case filled with beautiful cakes and pastries. Then he looked back at Sarah. "How much is your smallest birthday cake?" Sarah named the price. The woman immediately shook her head. "No, please. I wasn't asking anyone to buy us anything." The man stood and walked to the counter. "I know," he said gently. "That's exactly why I want to help." The woman lowered her eyes. "I can't accept charity." The man smiled kindly. "Then don't think of it as charity. Think of it as one parent helping another." Sarah watched silently as the little girl stared at the cakes with wide eyes. Suddenly the man pointed toward a beautiful chocolate cake decorated with strawberries and white roses. "I want that one." Sarah's eyes widened. It was the bakery's most expensive cake. The woman looked horrified. "No, that's too much." But the man shook his head. "Every 7-year-old deserves to feel special on her birthday." Emma looked up at her mother hopefully. Tears formed in the woman's eyes as she finally nodded. Sarah carefully boxed the cake while the man also added candles, cookies, cupcakes, and a birthday card. As she packed everything together, she noticed the name on the man's credit card and nearly dropped it. It belonged to Jonathan Hayes, one of the country's most successful millionaires and owner of a nationwide chain of technology companies. Sarah had seen his face in magazines and newspapers countless times. The woman clearly had no idea who he was. Before leaving, Jonathan knelt down beside Emma. "Promise me something," he said. Emma nodded seriously. "When you grow up and see someone who needs help, help them if you can." Emma smiled. "I promise." The following afternoon Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about the little girl and her mother. Something about their dignity despite their struggles stayed in his mind. He asked one of his assistants to find out more about them. He soon learned that Emma's mother, Laura Bennett, worked 2 jobs after losing her husband in an accident 3 years earlier. Despite working nearly every day, she still struggled to pay rent and school expenses. Yet she had never asked anyone for money. She had only wanted an expired cake so her daughter wouldn't feel forgotten on her birthday. Jonathan sat silently in his office after hearing the story. He had spent years building companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but somehow the image of a mother asking for a discarded cake affected him more than any business meeting ever had. The next morning Laura received a phone call asking her to visit the headquarters of Hayes Technologies. Certain there had been some mistake, she arrived nervously with Emma by her side. To her surprise, Jonathan personally greeted them in the lobby. He led them into a conference room overlooking the city skyline. "I have a proposal for you," he said. Laura looked confused. Jonathan explained that one of his companies needed an administrative assistant and offered her a full-time position with benefits, flexible hours, and a salary far beyond what she currently earned. Laura stared at him in disbelief. "Why would you do this for us?" Jonathan looked toward Emma, who was coloring quietly at the table. "Because no mother working as hard as you should have to ask for an expired cake for her child." Laura covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Emma looked up in confusion before hugging her mother tightly. Months later Jonathan received an invitation in the mail. It was for Emma's 8th birthday party. This time the celebration was held in a small community hall filled with balloons, decorations, and laughter. When Jonathan arrived, Emma ran toward him with a huge smile. On the table stood a beautiful homemade birthday cake baked by Laura herself. Emma proudly pointed at it. "My mom made it." Jonathan smiled. "It looks perfect." Emma grinned and replied, "And this year we even have leftovers." Everyone laughed. As Jonathan looked around the room, he realized something important. Success wasn't measured by company profits or stock prices. Sometimes success was knowing that because you chose to listen, one little girl would never again have to celebrate her birthday with an unwanted cake. And as the candles flickered in front of Emma's smiling face, Jonathan Hayes quietly wiped away tears that nobody noticed.